Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time you're watching this, and welcome to another episode of the Non-Identity Podcast. Now, this week we're joined by a content creator and streamer, and at the moment is playing Digby Caesar in the Unique City roleplay as the mayor. It's Yourpalgames. Hi, Yourpal. Welcome to the show.
Hello, thanks for having me on.
Before we get into what you're doing now, can you just explain to people who you are and where you grew up and stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a writer by day, a content creator by night. I've been doing content for, gosh, I guess about five years or so now. I started off doing virtual reality content over on YouTube, just around the time the first Oculus Quest came out. And I remember getting that headset, putting it on, and just thinking, "Wow, this is an entirely different world." And I started playing a game called Pavlov, which was sort of a first-person shooter in virtual reality. And for whatever reason, when I first started doing VR, I didn't want to be myself. I wanted to be someone else. So I put on this sort of deep American voice, and just started doing sort of comedy skits and stuff in Pavlov. And people kept asking me if I had a YouTube, and I thought, well, I might as well make one. And it sort of went from there, really. I started doing VR content and then moved over to doing Fortnite content over on TikTok. And then about 2 months ago, I went and started doing GTA roleplay content, which is now absolutely what I want to be doing.
So when you decided to pick up the VR, was it just to experience it yourself, or was a goal behind it to bring
Yeah,
laughter to people?
it was. I mean, I'm sure a lot of your listeners will have heard of a group of YouTubers called The Boys.
Yeah.
And they, sort of Josh Jubb and Mully and whatnot were very much leading the way in VR content creation. And that inspired me to get a VR headset. But I didn't really do it with the aim of making content. It was more just to experience what they were experiencing, for myself. And it was incredible. The idea of sitting down in your living room and being transported to an entirely different world was incredible, and being able to pick up on people's hand movements and stuff in VR as well is absolutely fantastic. And then over time, I linked up with a couple of content creators, Limited Chills and Cadet Grumpy Duck, and we sort of became a bit of a threesome. We made content together and still do, and we just sort of shared everything that we knew as we went along the way. And just kind of grew, and we all started making content at roughly the same time. And just kind of grew together and shared what we were learning.
And kind of obviously technology keeps moving on. What have you noticed about gaming experience moving on over the last 5, 6 years?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really interesting question. You're absolutely right. Technology keeps moving and will continue to keep moving. I think the rise of AI, for example, is really interesting with gaming. I've seen a couple of examples of people using AI to make NPCs, for example, non-playable characters in games like Skyrim. There's a wonderful content creator called Genghis VR who actually did that. She was in a VR headset with Skyrim, but the dialogue said by the NPCs was all written by AI. So no two
Wow.
conversations were the same, and nobody else could have the kind of conversation that she was having because they didn't have the same sort of inputs that they were getting. But it's the same thing that I think is happening elsewhere, in that as technology improves and as there will come a time when anybody can load into a fully virtual version of GTA, for example, and anybody will be able to have a conversation with an AI-driven NPC. And when that happens, the role of the expert, I guess, the role of someone who can not be an AI and who can just improvise on the fly and do voices and that kind of thing, is going to become more important. I think when that technology is accessible to everybody, then people are going to go searching for more authenticity. It's the same thing we've seen on TikTok, for example. The
Yeah.
first accounts that started doing AI content on TikTok blew up because nobody had seen it before. But now that AI content is everywhere, people are now saying, right, I want authenticity. I want the people who can give me real stories and real connections. So it's oddly cyclical in a way. As technology evolves, then we look for the technology, but then we look for the people as well.
And yeah, this was the kind of argument I was having with my daughter yesterday. She's 13, and we was mucking about talking about jobs. And she went, "Oh, I ain't got to worry because AI is going to run everything." And I
Yeah, of
said, "But you're still going to need that human touch." Like
course.
the way I say technology, because it's in the broad scheme of things, it's quite new. So we're,
Yeah,
we're playing with it like you do on Christmas Day when you play with a new toy. So
yeah,
everyone's just playing
absolutely.
with it, but then it's going to settle at some point, and we're still going to need to go back to the basic roots of human instincts.
Absolutely, absolutely. And there's some really interesting conversations happening around AI at the moment. I think there's a lot of worry about regulation of AI, and even,
Yeah.
it says a lot that the people who are making these models, OpenAI, for example, are out there saying, look, please regulate us. Please tell us what you don't want us to do, because in a way, we've already given away the keys to the kingdom. At the very moment that ChatGPT was able to be trained on the internet, as it existed up until September 2022, I believe, or 2021. At that point, all of it's gone. We've given away the keys to the kingdom at that point. On the other side of it, you've got the analogy I always use: if you're buying a house, right? There are probably AIs that could tell you, statistically speaking, this is the best house you should buy. But what you don't have is the person, the expert, who's been an estate agent for 30 or 40 years and who can say, right, from my experience and from my expert knowledge, this is the house you should buy. And I think we're going to grow to trust the role of that expert more and more.
Yeah, 100%. Because, like I said, I work in education, and obviously, like anyone, especially young people, they will use AI now to try and cheat the system with homework and stuff like that. So we're having to have specialised training into notice when it's AI and when it's the student.
Yeah.
But again, do you think that is, over the next couple of years then, because of things like that, that is going to make our creativity more lazier?
I think AI being accessible to all is fundamentally a good thing.
Yeah.
I think if you could, it's like having a knowledgeable friend at the end of the phone, right? If you can pick up your phone and say, right, I need advice, I need a question answering. If the knowledgeable friend can give you that answer with a certain degree of accuracy, because that's the other big problem with AI, it's designed to write and make you believe what it's saying, but you can't ultimately trust sometimes where it's pulling that information from. And I'll come back to that in a second. I think the role of AI is to help. It's not to take away people's jobs, or it's not to take away the end user. I think, as I say, the role of the expert is going to become more important. What AI can do is take away some of that heavy lifting, take away some of that grunt work. If part of your day-to-day job is, for example, to manage a spreadsheet, and you sit there on a Monday morning and think, oh, I could really do without this, inputting these numbers, making sure these columns are right. An AI could do that for you, leaving you free to do some creative thinking or move on to something that you do want to be doing. I mentioned there about trusting the output of an AI. We've done an experiment at work with AI, specifically in regards to writing emails. People wanted to write a professional email but didn't necessarily have the skill to do so, or the knowledge to do so. So I asked an AI to write an email to my line manager requesting Monday off work. The kind of thing that you might ask it to do. It did write an email. It got the name of my line manager right, which was quite scary. It also made up that I had a son, and it made up that my son had a doctor's appointment. It was designed, and obviously it was written to, if you didn't know me and didn't know I didn't have a son, you'd probably believe it. But yeah, it's not always as accurate as AI would have you believe.
And I think as well, people have got to remember it's a toolkit. The software comes as toolkits, because I use AI for my descriptions sometimes, or for my video titles, because it does come up with better stuff sometimes than what I would. So it's just that, as you said, it's a handy help kit. It's not the be all and end all of everything.
Yeah, there's a storyline that I'm working on that I want to do in GTA RP at some point about I would basically play an AI police officer who would start off being sort of like, very, very by the book, very, arresting people, that kind of thing. And we'd do it so that the PD were like, oh, that's just brilliant. We're going to save so much time. And then over time, it's ever so slightly going to go wrong, and maybe sort of use excessive force once, or maybe go on a dangerous chase once. And we'd build it over weeks and weeks and weeks. At the end point, they say this AI police officer would go, the only way to keep this city safe is to kill everyone in it, because then there's nobody to make the crime. And we just basically have this wonderful storyline where this AI police officer would go absolutely rogue.
Robocop 0.20.
Absolutely.
Moving on to that, so as you said, a couple of months ago you started streaming. How does someone go about streaming? Because I know nothing about streaming at all.
Yeah, I've been streaming on Twitch and latterly on TikTok for 5 years or so. A couple of months ago, I really changed up my content. I used to do a lot of Fortnite, and it brought in good numbers on TikTok, and I was learning a lot. But what it didn't have was it wasn't something that I was passionate about. Whereas in my everyday life, I do sort of amateur dramatics. I love improvising, and I love being challenged to improvise in that way, and I love doing different voices. So GTA RP was something that I wanted to do, and I put in an application for 2 GTA servers. One was ONX, I believe, and the other one was Unique RP. My ONX application got denied, and my Unique RP one didn't. And it couldn't have been it's been the best decision I've made in a long time. I've met some wonderful friends. I met my current partner through doing GTA RP.
Oh, wow.
It's really, really wonderful. The community of people that they have in Unique RP, especially Unique RP, I think, the server owners, the team, the characters, the level of role play is just on a different level. As far as streaming, I think it's never been easier to start. I think, and you can read lots of guides on YouTube and on the internet about, okay, before you start, have a branding kit set up. Before you start, have a name set up across all the different channels so that it's the same wherever people choose to find you. Before you start, do X, Y, Z. My advice is just start.
Yeah.
Just start and learn it along the way. Your first stream will be not very good, and that's okay. My first stream was crap. I looked so nervous. I barely had a camera on. My microphone was spotted. But you know what? There was probably one person in the chat going, okay, these are the things I want you to improve on for next time. And you take that and you do. You improve one thing. You improve one thing every single time. And then you just improve that one thing, and you do it again, and you do it again. And before long, it becomes like a show. I try and treat my streams now like a show. Like, I'm deliberately quite high energy, especially at the start, because I want people to feel excited about coming in. I want people to feel excited about the experience in the next chapter of my character's story and whatever's going to happen. And especially with GTA RP, I think that's something that genre is quite good at. It becomes like a nightly soap opera that people want to hear more of. And RP is a great escape as well. There was a wonderful clip from one of the Unique RP owners, a guy called Casual, who said that for some of us, this is more than RP. It's an escape. It's a chance to be somebody who we can't be in daily life. Like, my character Digby is way more confident than I am. He is way more eloquent than I am. He is able to be a part of me that I don't feel I can be in my regular life. And it gives me a chance to experience what that's like and say, okay, if I was 10% more confident, this is what that would look like. And it's a real benefit.
And I totally get that, because to be honest, I heard about RP a couple of years ago. I think one of the Beta Squad boys was on Chat Make Happy Hours podcast, and I sat there and he's talking about how you get a job and you get paid, and I'm thinking, are you being serious? Like, people are just going to log into a game and pretend to work in a hospital or whatever. And then I follow Tyrone, and a couple of months ago, I come across the scene he was doing as Officer Gordon.
Yeah.
And it's one of the most funniest things I've seen. And I tune in every night now, like you said.
Yeah.
Between 9 and 10 is my GTA RP time. And I flick between you guys to see how long your stories you are. So I think, when you hear the premise from an outsider who wasn't that interested, doesn't sound great. But when you actually sit down and watch it, it is like you said, it's like watching
so
a show.
easy to get sucked in as well. I mean, myself and my current partner Sarah, we love just flipping between different GTA streams and finding out, okay, we've seen that character in RP, we've role played with them. Here's what they're doing this evening when we're not around, kind of thing. And likewise, as a content creator, you then go back and watch other people's streams and figure out what they were experiencing from their point of view. But the thing that I love about it is you never know where a night's going to lead. So, for example, my stream just yesterday, I logged on, not really having any particular plan, end up getting into a fight with the owner of a pub over allegations that my fiance was sleeping with someone else. And we had a proper fight in a ring down at a fight club. It was all hyped up, and it was brilliant. It was great RP and a story that came out of absolutely nowhere. But because of that, I mean, that's, again, I think that's one of the things that is wonderful about Unique RP in particular, is the quality of the people who are in there are incredible. Everybody is capable of holding a conversation and holding a story and holding a character to account. Because it would have been easy for someone to say, "Oh, your fiance is sleeping around." No, she isn't. Goodbye, and walking off. But it takes a certain quality to be able to go, is she? Tell me more. Where could this? It's yes anding is what I would refer to it as. It's an improvisation technique, but it requires a certain amount of nous to do that, and I think that's really cool.
And how does the RP creator community feel like when you get bigger influences popping in and out? So, like, obviously in season 1, you've had Angry Ginge and Finny and stuff. Is it a sense, because like, not wanting to compare, but you know, like the Misfits boxing scene, influencer boxing, to a casual fan, it's great, it's fantastic. But to the boxing hardcores, it's like, well, why are these guys coming in onto our scene and then making the money and going again? Is there freedom of that in the community, or does everyone embrace when you do get a bigger creator popping?
I think, to be honest, one of the things that I really like about roleplay is it puts everyone on a level playing field.
Exactly.
Because the people who want to get into the server just to have a scene with Tyrone or just to have a scene with Ginge, they don't make it into the server because that's their only goal. Or if they do, they're dealt with very quickly. But when you're just as a character, it takes all of that away. Like I've had a few scenes with Tyrone where I haven't thought of him as Tyrone. I thought of him as Ty, his character, or thought of him as Gordon, his character.
Sorry to interrupt. My favourite scene of recent was in season 1, was when he wanted riot shields as Gordon, and you was telling him about the end of the world because he was coming to us, and he wasn't having none of it. And I was just cracked up. It's one of my favourite things I've witnessed, and I kept going to. I was calling my wife down. I was calling the kids in. I was like, "Come on, watch this. This is so funny." You two was outside PD having a massive argument about he was telling you how there's a conspiracy theory coming, and all this stuff like that. So like you said, it wasn't Tyrone and you, it was Gordon and Digby.
Exactly. And that's one of the things I really like about RP is it puts everybody on a level playing field, which means everybody has a chance to shine. You could be sitting there on 1,000 viewers having a scene with somebody who's sitting there on 1 viewer. It doesn't matter. If the quality of your RP is good enough that you are a character that people want to see more of, and if the quality of your RP is good enough that you can hold a conversation and push a story forwards, then it really doesn't matter how big of a creator you are. You are on a level playing field.
But when you're in that scenes with those creators, do you feel like there's a pressure because you know there's more eyes watching to make good role play? Or...
Yeah, in a certain sense, yes. I mean, especially when it's a huge creator, you will often, you'll see your follower alerts pop up, for example, and you'll know, okay, there are extra eyes on me now. I want to make this scene good. But it's not, I wouldn't say it's a pressure to perform. It's more just a sort of, okay, I want to make this the best that it can be. But the other thing I'd say is that all of the big creators who I've come across so far in Unique especially have been so lovely to work with. There was a time not too long ago where the server was facing a couple of issues, and there was some maintenance going on. What was really nice was it actually gave us about half an hour for all of the creators to get into a voice chat in Discord, and all we did was talk about our favorite memories from season 1, and we talked about the things that we liked, and it was nice to be able to see or hear the voices behind the characters, because obviously Digby's voice is completely different to my own. So everybody was like, wow, that's the, I thought Digby's voice was your voice. It was a really lovely moment.
Yeah, I watched that call, and that's in a way sort of led, because when I see Digby, like I assume like everyone else that was your voice, and then the moment you said hello, it was like, oh, hang on a sec.
Yeah, Digby's voice is very nasally. So Digby's voice, it's really interesting, like phonetically, because Digby's voice starts basically at the back of the throat, and you just sort of push it out through your nose, and obviously he's got the S sound that he does. Which the weird thing is, as a content creator, Digby's voice is starting to annoy me because it's the S sound. I just can't get it right. But then obviously my voice is not that. But Digby's voice it's an easy voice to do. It's a voice that I can do for hours on a time.
And how did you create Digby? Was it a conscious effort to make him a news reporter before he became...
No. So Digby actually existed in a previous GTA RP server, a small-scale one called Freedom City, where Digby was a homeless man, and he was based on a character that existed in a sketch series called Mitchell and Webb. There was a sketch series called That Mitchell and Webb Look, and there was a character in there called Sir Digby Chicken Caesar, who was an insane homeless man who was forever trying to find his nemesis, and he had a partner called Ginger. So I said, right, let's take that character, let's use that as inspiration, let's make him a bit more dangerous, let's change the person up for a horse called Ginger who nobody can ever see, and let's make him that. And then when I took him into Unique, I then decided quite early on to make him a news reporter, because I had this idea that, okay, if you're a cop, your RP is generally speaking limited to PDs and criminals. If you're a criminal, your RP is generally limited to criminals and the PD. If you're UHS, it's generally limited to medical. And I didn't want that to be the case with Digby. I wanted him to be the kind of person who could talk to anybody and who could interact with anybody. And fortunately, with my background as a writer, I was also able to, actually have some skill to make some stories and to be able to write the content that appeared on the unique news app on people's phones. So it was a lovely moment where I remember there was a stream where I'd been called upon by the staff team to officiate the funeral for a character. And I remember thinking, wow, this is great. Digby's being noticed. And at the end of that, there was this, they did it so brilliantly. They sort of took me round a corner, I think under the pretense of taking me back to my car. And suddenly there was this news van. And there were these two people in sort of high-vis jackets who were talking about, oh, we actually are looking for a news presenter. So we RP'd a scene where Digby effectively had to audition. And then they took me down to this news office, which was then, everything was in the game and ready. They gave Digby a news service. It was wonderful.
And how did Digby become mayor?
So again, that was something that was put in place by the unique staff team. They knew that they wanted a mayor in the city. They wanted it to be an in-city person whose job would be basically to communicate ideas from the player base up to the staff team, to collect taxes, that kind of thing. So we had an entire election campaign. I think at one point there was 31 different candidates. Yep. It was whittled down to two of us. Myself and Stephen O'Brien, and we had an actual election in the city. So again, that created wonderful RP for everybody involved, because we had actual placards with our posters on it. We had to get people down there to go and vote. And very happy to say that I won it.
And sort of having that title in RP, is that sort of brought outside of RP as well? Do you get creators emailing you with ideas and stuff because you're the mayor?
Yeah, so we're still sort of getting some of it underway, but the idea at the moment is that if you want to run an event of some description, then it's going to have to come through the mayor's office, which means it has to come through me. And obviously that gives me wonderful opportunities for RP. It gives other people other opportunities for RP as well. I think it's been said by the unique staff team, and it's something I absolutely agree with. They wanted to make as much of the running of the city done in the city as possible. So it would be easy to drop a DM to one of the developers and go, hello, I'd like to do this event, but that's taking it out of city. Whereas in the city, if you have to go to the mayor, say, I want to run this event, and the mayor goes, yep, sounds good. I'll send that up to the council. Then that entire conversation can be done in city. And the same reason why one of the things Digby has done or is doing is setting up an in-city council, so that again, that conversation of, right, what do we want to improve about this city, what are the challenges that we're facing, is done in city rather than being done in a Discord channel.
No, brilliant. And what has been one of your favourite scenes that you've all played out? I know you've probably had so many because you come across loads of people.
Yeah. So, oh gosh, that is a tough one. Right. So I've got two actually. One favorite was actually no, I'll go with the one. So one of my favorite scenes was when again, one of the owners of the server, Kev, was in as his Uncle P character, who is this sort of masked criminal mastermind. And yeah, he called upon Digby to come down to an abandoned office under the pretense of giving him the biggest news story he'd ever get. Digby gets down there, and Uncle P is sitting there on a chair, creepy voice, creepy lighting. It was set up so perfectly, and says, right, I want you to write a story about my nephew, Kevin, who is the other character he plays in the city. And then it comes down to a test of loyalty where Digby has to bring another character, Dialing Ping, to that office as well. And he then has to shoot him. Right. And this was part of a bigger storyline that was going to introduce guns to the city of Unique for the first time. And Digby was given a gun and had to shoot Dialing Ping to prove his loyalty to Uncle P. And it was such an intense scene. And it was a classic example of a bigger creator like Cav bringing in a smaller creator, me, and just giving them a toolbox full of toys to play with, which it was so much fun. And I remember, I didn't realize at the time the significance of being given a gun. So actually having shot him, I was like, I need to get rid of this gun. So I put it in a dumpster.
Oh,
I then went back and watched Kev's stream a couple of days later, and he's there going, "Why are you putting it in a dumpster? Someone will go and get that so quickly." So my chat were like, "No, go back, get the gun." And then unfortunately Digby did the classic Digby thing where he leapt over a wall thinking there was something on the other side, and there wasn't, and blacked out.
And like everyone, you said a lot of the nights it's improvised. When something comes into play, that storyline that latches on that you feel like could run for like a week, would you then consult with the other creators and say, like, we could drag this out? And do you plan little things throughout the week, or do you still just lock in and see it turns up?
It's a really interesting point. I think I'm trying to do more of that in terms of a bigger storyline that lasts the entire season. Yeah. But it's difficult. If you plan too much, then it takes the spontaneity out of a scene.
Exactly.
If you have something that goes, right, this is the script, I want you to say X, I want you to say Y, it takes the spontaneity, it takes the comedy out of it. What I personally would probably do, and I can only speak for myself here, is if there was a storyline that I wanted to do, I would probably start RPing it, so we got the story going naturally in the city. I might then talk to the other creators and say, look, if you're up for it, this is where I think this storyline should go. These are the points we need to hit along the way. And there might only be 3 or 4 of them. And we'd probably leave it at that. That way, everybody knows this is a storyline that we want to get going. These are the key markers we have to hit, and that's it. I wouldn't go down the route of going, and then you say X, Y, Z, because that just takes the improvisation.
On Wednesday at 6 p.m., you're going to be much in front, standing on one foot.
Exactly.
Like you said, you liken your streams to a show now. Like, in terms of equipment, and I know we're jumping in between things, do you have to set up and then do you test everything before you go live? Like, I don't do live because I worry about things going on. This is why I like to pre-record things. Do you ever have that nervousness and worry when you're streaming?
I think I used to. Right at the moment, I stream to both Twitch and TikTok. Yeah. So I have my OBS studio going for Twitch. I also use that as a virtual camera over the TikTok live studio, so that's running. I'll have my Twitch chat open, my TikTok live chat open, and that's before I start up the game. So I'm doing kind of mental checks before I get going, but it's not anywhere near as stressful as it used to be. But honestly, I mean, for someone like yourself, I would say just try it. Just try going live. What's the worst that could happen?
Yeah, no, it's a hard one. I've done a couple of lives, and I just panic. I think it's that imposter syndrome because I've been fortunate enough to interview like Fake Warren, Davin Brown, a couple of the EastEnders cast. But while I'm doing it, like even speaking to yourself, to me, I'm quite honoured because I've been watching you for the last couple of weeks and stuff like that. You've been in my home every night, so I then sit there and think, but who am I to then be able to sit here and talk to you guys like yourself and other people like that? So I get a bit of that imposter syndrome.
Of course.
Where I can edit that out in a pre-recorded, but in a live, that could freeze me sometimes. It's really weird.
Of course. I absolutely get that. And, the first time I think that I realized I was in a scene with Ginge, for example, I felt very much the same. But, you're giving people a platform to tell their stories, and that's a very powerful thing. So I think you should be very proud of what you've done so far.
Thank you. I do appreciate that. Also, going back to you and your community, in your content, you mentioned the goal is to raise a positive community. How do you feel through bringing comedy role play and the community you're building on Twitch and stuff? You could do that.
Sure. I mean, I've said it multiple times on my streams, and I will do for as long as I do content. My whole thing is let's say, for example, I was streaming and there was somebody watching who'd had a really bad day. The kind of day where you just want the world to go away, If I can make one person smile who really, really needed it, that is job done. I do not care about anything else. And, sure, numbers are great, subs are great. Being able to turn this into more of a side hustle that makes a little bit of money is great. But that has always been the driving philosophy, has been kindness above all. treat people how you want to be treated yourself. And yes, we're doing comedy role play, but I'm going to try and foster a positive community along the side as well. And I've been very lucky. The people in my community are absolutely outstanding. And we've had people come in and say, look, I just want you to know I was having a really rubbish day. I'm not anymore.
Well, that's brilliant. 100%. That's sort of the message behind this platform as well. If I can just reach one person, I feel like that's fantastic. So I really love that ethos. Right, we're coming to the end, and it's such a shame. I could talk to you for ages, but I've got one last question, and this question I ask every guest. If you could be remembered for one word and one word only, what would it be and why?
Oh, that is a tough one. There's a quote which I believe Stephen Fry said. He's a big hero of mine.
Yeah, love Stephen Fry.
He said, "In a world where you can be anything, choose to be kind." So I think I'd love to be remembered for kindness, because God knows there's a lot of it needed in the world these days.
No, 100%. And can I put you on the spot? How would Digby answer that question?
Oh, how would Digby answer? Digby would say, oh, come on, it all comes down to power, doesn't it? When you're the mayor of a city, you need to face with challenges every day, but it's how you overcome those challenges. If you can stand up and put your big boy trousers on in the morning, step out your front door, get somebody to hand you a vanilla latte and go to work, that's real power, that is.
Thank you very much, Digby. David, it's been such a pleasure speaking to you. Where can people find you?
You can find me on all platforms as Yourpalgames. You can find Digby Caesar exclusively in Unique RP.
And we'll put some links in the description below. Thank you so much for your time. And anytime you want to come back on, please join us again.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you. And thank you for what you're doing as well. It's important.